Yeah, so we have an array of objects here. You may see it in this format if the objects are really small. You may see it in this format as the objects grow. How is everybody? Are we good to keep going? Let me close the door. Yeah, so we may see it in this format. We may see it even spread out even more with something like this where the brackets are even separated. But any of these that you see, we're just looking at an array of objects, which I'll just keep on one line for now. Using a for loop, I would like to console log dog, cat, bunny, sheep, just to start off. So, Moroni, could you help me set up this for loop? I'll get you started. There you go. Var I. Okay.
And we're just trying to list all of them, right?
Yep.
And so if I is less than
Dot length, okay.
then
I plus plus. All right, does everyone understand what's happening here? If you feel like you're the only one that doesn't, I promise you don't, so please let me know so we can cover it. Any questions on how that for loop was set up? Okay, what is animals.length? Cool, what's the literal number it represents at this point? 4. Why? Because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 objects inside of this array. So this will loop 4 times. What I'd like to do in each iteration is console log this string. So, Aaron, could you help me with the next line? How do I console log that property of each object as I loop over it? If you don't know, you can phone a friend. Yes, I want to see dog, cat, bunny, sheep console logged. I'll get you started. Okay. Now your turn.
So there's this, oh, okay. I'm gonna do animals.
We're on the right track. Not dot yet. Aha. I. Perfect. So we're saying as you loop through the array, the current animal you are, or you're on, animal bracket 0, which is dog, or if it's the second iteration of the for loop, animals bracket 1, which is cat. We're asking to console log that current animal's type, which is the key that I gave each of these objects. So if I just left this at 1 and I ran this with node down below, what would we see console logged out? Who votes dog, cat, bunny, sheep? Who votes it doesn't work? Who votes cat, 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 cat? Yeah. Why cat, 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 cat? Yeah, it's looping 4 times, but I'm hard-coded 1, so every single time it's getting this object. If I switch this to I, so the index changes with each loop, now what will I get? Dog, cat, bunny, sheep. Questions on that syntax?
What happens if you do an animals.type?
Like this. Who wants to make a guess? Who guesses dog, cat, bunny, sheep? Who guesses a big fat error that breaks node? That is correct. Because what are we asking? Let's just get rid of animals right here. When we say type bracket I. What are we asking JavaScript to do? Yeah, we're saying, hey, you have an array called type, look at its indexes. Where do we have an array called type, even if it's in animals? None of these are arrays, so we can't index this. If this was an array of different animals, we could, but it's not. So we have to put the bracket I directly after the array that we're indexing. So animals. Oh, don't do this now. Animals, which is the array, bracket I. Okay, now you're indexing the array, and each item in that array is an object, so access their dot type. So question. Which one?
Animal?
Oh, did I say? Yeah, at least I'm consistent. Okay, so what if, okay, now how do I console log the 4 strings? Dog, cat, bunny, sheep. All right, get rid of dot type. Anything else? Get rid of the brackets. No, yeah, we need the brackets. Right, so this right here, why don't I need a dot type chained onto that? Yeah, they're not objects, they're literal strings. So index of bracket I is dog. Or in this case, index of bracket I is an object with a dot type of dog. So without the object, we can just say, you know, run it as is. But as soon as they are an object, we got to say what part of the object to access. What if I ran this as is right now? What would we at console log? So I'm saying console log animals bracket I. Yeah, we're asking for the whole object now. But if we say, no, I want a specific property from that object, then we get more of what we're looking for. Yeah? Cool. That's our mini review of basic for loops. This format that you see with objects is the most common array you'll run into once we start making applications. Arrays of objects is just how data is transferred. So we'll get very familiar with this notation. So next, oops, we're going to look at nested for loops. These are a little bit trickier to get at first. So nested for loops are for nested arrays. What if I have a data type like this? Array of arrays is an array with, instead of objects, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have an array of arrays. So what is index bracket 1 of this variable? Index bracket 1. 4, 5, 6. It's that whole piece. Just like array bracket 1 here is that whole object. Well, if I did a for loop on this array, let's look at it. For I equals 0, I is less than what? Array of arrays dot length I plus plus. If I console log array of arrays bracket I, what am I going to see down below? What we're going to see is we're asking for show me this, show me this, show me this. Because bracket 0 is this whole array, bracket 1 is this whole array. Is that somewhat clicking? It's just like the object, right? When I said animals bracket I without the dot type, we got the entire object. So when I'm saying array bracket I without anything else, I'm just getting the whole array. So let's talk about this for a second. We'll do the nested for loop in just a second here. I want to console log the number 3. of the array of arrays. So let's go, Elizabeth. How might we do that? Phone a friend if needed. I want to see 3. I'll get you started. This is tough because we haven't seen this yet. So pull it out of the hat. Yeah. So what's the first thing I need to access? What is 3 a part of? 0, index 0. Okay, so that's the first one. Let's get the first array that we need. But now this is an array, right? Now we've isolated this. What index is 3 of that inner array? 2. It's the third item or the second index. So I can then chain on 2. So I'm saying go into this array and then go into that array. So if I console comment this out just so we can see it, we should get the number 3. Okay. Hannah, I want the number 8. Right, does everyone see how we got that? This is index 0, 1, 2. And then we're looking at 0, 1. Great. So how do we simulate this with an array? What if, or with a loop? What if, instead of just getting the entire array at a time, I actually want to console log every single number within my for loop? The answer, we loop again. We loop in a loop. Because every time we loop, we're hitting an array. And then the inside loop will then go loop through this inside array. And this is this kind of array of arrays is often referred to as a matrix, because you can kind of see it as a grid, columns and rows. Here's our first row, here's our first column. Yeah, I like the matrix, yeah. So let's do this. Inside of this for loop, I'm going to declare another for loop. But I can't use I. Why can't I use I? I'm still in the scope of this for loop. So I has already been declared. I don't want to override it. So the convention is typically the next letter of the alphabet, J. That'll also start at 0. But this is tricky. Where does it end? Where is its endpoint? Well, J is less than what? Yeah. Yeah. Now this melted my brain for a while. So if it's melting yours, yes.
Well, I mean, except what you want is that, well, it makes more sense if we have like, four arrays inside the array or whatever, but, the idea is that, you're gonna, with the first loop, you're just gonna go through the whole array, and then on the spot, you're gonna go, well, on the second floor, you're just gonna go through the numbers itself.
Yeah, so if I console log, that's exactly right. If I console logged array of arrays I before this inner for loop, the very first time this for loop runs, we're gonna see 1, 2, 3, right? At this moment in time, that's what this is. But before this for loop moves on to its next loop, we're saying, no, you have more work to do. So the next line of code that read is this for loop, and this will run as many times as needed, and then exit out, and then start this for loop over again. So array bracket A, or array of arrays bracket I right now is 1, 2, 3. So a length of 3, yeah.
So instead of arrays, bracket 9, we should be able to do arrays, bracket 2, bracket 2.
So that would get me 8. Or 9, sorry. That's array of arrays bracket 2, bracket 2. So 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, if that's what you're saying?
Yeah, as far as in your work to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, so what does array bracket 2 bracket 2 evaluate to? 9. So if we put that here or here, what we're really asking is while J is less than 9. So it's going to iterate 9 times, but this array of array only has 3 items in it, so we're going to get a bunch of undefined. So we have to reference the array itself, so we have the right length. Because, yeah, so what is the length of array of arrays bracket I? 3. It's this item right here. So then this for loop goes through, and I would like to console log 1, 2, 3. So I'll say array of arrays. Then how do I isolate 0, these 3 numbers? Think this. Think this, but in a dynamic sense. Bracket I, bracket J. And it looks crazy, and it hurts a little bit. But so now we should see array console log, and then all 3 numbers console logged. Then the next array console log, then all 3 numbers console logged.
Watch it not work.
Yeah, and watch it not work like half the time. Right, so if we have nested arrays, the only way to get to each individual item individually is by doing a loop in a loop. So we got to loop over the outer container and then loop again for each inner container.
So is the first console log outputting the 1, 2, 3 and whatever in brackets? And
Yep.
then the second console log is doing 1, 2, 3 and so forth, just iteration there.
Yes. So interesting question. How many times does this for loop run? How many times does this outer for loop iterate? Yes, it iterates 3 times. Let me move that up a line. Now, second question, if you can guess it. How many times does this for loop iterate?
Well, 3,
3 for each instance, which with 3 instances, we got a 3 times 3 iterates 9 times. So let's follow this through exactly like the computer would read it. First iteration, loop through this array, start I at 0, great. Console log, array of arrays, at bracket 0. Got it, that's 1, 2, 3. And we see that console log down below. Then we say, while you're at it, loop again over that array of arrays. So loop over 1, 2, 3, and console log array. So the first time through, right, I is 0. Sorry, I'll keep this hard coded in here for a second. And then here we're really saying, give us array bracket 0, bracket 1. So what is that in our array of arrays? Oh, sorry, not 1. It's going to be 0 first. So 0, 0 is 1. But this for loop isn't done yet because it's not to the end of the array it's on. So then this changes to 1, which is what number? 2. Then it changes again to 2, gets us 3. But now we've hit the end of the length array. It kicks out, starts this for loop over again. But now I is 1. So it's giving us the array 4, 5, 6. And then now J is, what is J at this point? It gets reset back to 0 every time. We're saying go back to 0 every time this for loop gets hit. But array of arrays is on bracket 1. That's what I is. So now we're going to be console logging 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, which is these 3 numbers. Then the last iteration hits, we get to the final array in the array of arrays, which is this one. We're looping over its length. So I is 2, and then we hit 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. And that's how it's literally being read by the computer line by line. At this point, it exits out. It checks this for loop. Oh, we've hit the end. It exits out, and it's done. So that's how this runs 3 times. This runs 9 times. The magic of using our iterator variable. That has nothing to do with our array, but if we're setting it up to be the right numbers, don't go over the length of what this is, don't give me too many indexes, we're fine. Now, if I did hard code this as like 8, the first 3 iterations are going to work fine. But what's going to happen after that? can't read length of undefined. Where is it saying that?
25.
Yes, it is. Because notice it did the first couple just fine, and then it hits an undefined because there is no array bracket 3. So as soon as we try to index the length of that inner array that doesn't exist, our app breaks. So we have to use the length of the item we're looping over to make sure we never hit an undefined. It doesn't go past this point.
Make it, without brackets.
Which one?
Still no, it's like brackets.
Like that? Yeah, that's because right here we're console logging each inner array. So it's showing us that's an array, that's an array, that's an array. If we got rid of this line though, we'll just see all the numbers. So I was just kind of leaving that there so we could see each major array and then see it loop through each of those. And we got a couple more minutes, so let's look at one more thing with nested loops and we'll go to lunch. But this is kind of the intro to it. Fortunately, most people online, when you're getting data from another website, they won't make you do this. They're good at organizing their data. But if you get to a company like Facebook or Google or YouTube, where their data sets are trillions in databases, sometimes it's unavoidable. You got to nest them, which means use the programmer to get this big array of arrays of objects maybe, and have to figure out how to get the data out of that you need. This is going to be key to get anything in a nested loop, nested array. Yeah. So let's use a nested for loop to generate a matrix. We're not going to have an array to loop over. We're going to create an array of arrays using a nested for loop. The stank faces I'm seeing right now is so good. It's like, what the? I get it. Oh, I get it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable called matrix. And just make an empty array. And with this empty array, I'm going to create a grid like this, an array of arrays. So for loop number 1. And let's say this is going to be 10 items large. So I'm hard coding a 10. I want a 10 by 10 grid, so to speak.
Set another for loop for the array.
Yep, so we'll have another for loop that also goes to 10. Because what this will do right here, the first time this runs, what we need to essentially do is create an inner array. Then in this for loop, we need to push in 10 values. I think that's 10. So that after this runs 10 times, we end up with something like that. So let's create that so we don't have to type it all out. So before we get into the inner loop, we need to generate that inner array. We need to create this effect one by one. Not necessarily. I can say, I can do this a couple ways. I can say push in a new array. So now every time this for loop runs, it pushes in an empty array. So the first time it runs, we get this. Then in here, I can push into this array 10 numbers. So let's look at that first. What is the index of this inner array? Matrix bracket what? It does. This does have an index. 0, yeah. Which I is 0, right? So what I'll do in here, come on. I will say matrix bracket I, that array that I just pushed into the first index into it now, and push into that nested array the number 0, for example. And funny enough, that's it. So let's look at our matrix. And this may come out really weird. Let's see. Oh, that worked. So every time the outer for loop runs, we say create this new array, this one right here. Then the inner for loop runs and says push the number 0 into that array 10 times. We get all those. Then this for loop goes again, it's 1. So we push in a new array, which is going to create these brackets. And then the inner for loop indexes into that one, bracket 1, and pushes in 10 numbers. Yeah, 10 times. If I wanted these to be the numbers 1 through 10, right now I'm pushing in 0. How can I push in the numbers 1 through 10 using what I already have? J plus 1, yeah. Because J is going to reset back to 0 every time. I want it to be 1 through 10 rather than 0 through 9.
The first matrix dot push just creates like the empty array of brackets that you see on the
Left and right side.
in the middle.
Yeah,
then
this
the
and this.
one pushes the numbers into that empty array.
Yep. And I guess the only way to get into a nested array is with a nested loop. If we're trying to check every item, you can index it as we've seen. You know, we can say array of arrays bracket 2, bracket 1 to get a specific item. But if we need to check every item, we're going to be double for looping. So the alternative to push, just so we can see it, if we weren't using push, we can say matrix bracket I should be an empty array. This is saying the same thing, because what is matrix bracket I the first time this loops? It is nothing. There's nothing in here. So I can use assignment to say, hey, matrix at bracket 0, be an empty array. And that will actually put it in there just as if I were to push it in. So the same follows suit with the numbers. I can say matrix bracket I bracket J equals, and if we wanted to do our same little math thing here, we could say J plus 1. To get the same effect. So if one syntax looks more friendly than the other, use the friendly one and remember to come back and look at the scary one. If they're both scary, pick one. just pick one. Now, nested for loops, you honestly won't have a need for this kind of algorithmic problem solving for another 4 weeks when it comes to like getting data from online, but remember it, we do have a little exercise called forception, because it's like inception, but for loops. I think you got that, but just in case. Let me find it here. So we got forception, loops within loops, and it's really just one problem. It's asking you to take these 2 arrays using a nested for loop, output one array that looks like this. So it'll have John and then the entire alphabet uppercase, and then Jacob and then the entire alphabet uppercase, and then Jingle, entire alphabet uppercase. And this is all in one array. So how do we take both of these using a nested for loop and enter this once, then loop all the way through this, and enter this once, then loop all the way through this? This is exactly what we're doing here. We're looping once, then we're going all the way through. We're looping once, we're going all the way through. So this is one exercise I'll push in that you can, we'll probably look at it in the next day or 2 together, but there's, what's that? Yeah, I'll send you the notes too. And then just because I know you love just being bombarded with exercises, more loops to practice. Yeah, we're all happy. Why? Because we will, by the end of this course, yeah, because I can, but by the end of this course, you will have written over 1,000 loops, and they won't all look like a for loop. There's many versions of loops that do exactly what we're doing with the for loop. For loop is like doing your base arithmetic. There's other functions that are like using a calculator that does it for you. So right now we're writing our loops explicitly, but later we'll have functions that do loops for you. And so really drilling into how even basic loops work is of the utmost importance. So I'll pop these two into Slack. After lunch, spend the first good half hour, 45 minutes working on exercises. We'll do our next lesson around 2:15, 2:30. But yeah, please be back at 1:30 and we'll go from there. Soraya may also be dropping in today for a short workshop on career readiness and such. She'll be doing that occasionally as part of the services that V-School provides. So yeah, I'll put this in Slack and let's go to lunch.